This week on Whiplash, we're diving into the economy, but not in the usual dry graphs and stats way. We're talking about wealth, power, culture wars, and yes, avocado toast. How do systems protect the rich while everyday people get told to stick to your $3 meal? And what does Catholic social teaching have to say about all of it? Stick around. Shannon Kaschak and I break it down with insight, humor, and a little moral clarity for the mess we're living in. You're listening to Whiplash, a listener-supported podcast exploring Catholicism through the lens of queer liberation theology. I'm Max Kuzma, a transgender man, columnist for the National Catholic Reporter, and board member of Dignity USA. Thank you to the paid Substack subscribers who make this work possible. Today's episode is really special to me because I'm joined by someone who has known me since a very specific era of my life, the Franciscan University years. Yes, that Franciscan University. Shannon and I met in college, where we were both, I would say, very earnest, very Catholic, and very much inside a world where we both, let's say, have done a lot of reflecting about it since. We've both had a lot of questions about what all went down there, about formation, about politics, about theology, about power, or how about the pollution, Shannon?
Well, we're all ruined from that.
It's true. Shannon is a marketing and communications specialist who works primarily in the nonprofit world. Her career has centered on organizations trying to make communities more just, more empowered, and more whole. She specialized her MBA in healthcare administration because she wants equitable care for everyone, not just the wealthy, not just the well-connected. She's also a mom of 3. And if you ever want to understand her politics, just listen to the mantra that she has her kids say every morning. Do your best. Be a good neighbor. Nobody gets left behind. We are hell raisers, heaven bringers, justice seekers, and peace weavers. Shannon, welcome to Whiplash.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like we have the best off-the-cuff random conversations.
Truly.
And when I was learning to cook, because I just never had that skill growing up, never invested the time in it, I was texting you all the time. And it was so nice to have someone who was like, okay, this is a little weird, but yes, I think I see where you're going with this.
Those are great, though. Your ability to think on your feet and pull things out of nowhere was always inspiring to me. I was like, I'm going to try to make something like that this week. So I loved it.
I loved it too. And then I think the only thing was I was intimidated when you were making big roasts or turkey or chicken roasts. You would tell me and I was like, I can never speak to her again. She can do a whole roast. That's so cool. I was intimidated.
Which is so funny because I still can't cook a chicken to save my life. My mom has to come over and help me. I call her and I'm like, what's the temperature? When do I put the water in the bottom? It's a lot. I've only successfully done it once. We switched to smoking our chickens instead now because that's way less work. You just put it in there and leave it. Oh.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Whenever there's something that is more technical in our house like that, I am the one who is more creative and I'll taste as I go, that type of cooking. But if it's baking where it's you have to be exact, or if it's anything raw meat that scares me, I bring my partner. I'm like, please help me.
Yeah, no, totally. I feel that.
So I am excited to talk to you about this topic of the economy. And not just because we are both millennials who are tired of hearing that we need to stop buying avocado toast. And on that topic of weird financial advice, have you heard about this $3 per meal scheme promoted in January of this year by the U.S. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins, which consists of, sorry, this question is so long, 1 piece of chicken, 1 piece of broccoli, 1 corn tortilla, and 1 other mystery thing. And I said in my notes, it's late-stage-capitalism lunchable.
Which it is. And that was the craziest thing I've ever heard, because where are we buying $3 chicken? Hello? Are you giving us a piece? Can we even buy chicken for $3? It's like,
I don't think so.
No. And have you seen the size of a corn tortilla? Like, it's like this big. Who is full on that?
I know. And I think that the interesting thing about that $3 meal thing as well is that it's one of those tactics, I think, of capitalism that basically puts the responsibility on the consumer, kind of like with like energy conservation, how it's always like, well, you random citizens, you need to make sure that you turn your lights off in the rooms when you're not using them, and you need to recycle, and da 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 da. Meanwhile, these big companies are just like polluting the earth with like almost no consequences.
Yeah, zero. Like zero thought to leaving the planet in a state to be able to exist, right? But yes, this is crazy, this food thing. Because also, what about people who can't go to the grocery store and buy fresh broccoli, chicken breast, a pack of corn tortillas, and one other thing? Like, they have to work all day. Maybe the most affordable meal for them is a Happy Meal, right? And like the most accessible thing. So this is so out of touch with reality for so many people. Not even just with the price, but like one piece of broccoli. What does that even mean? I make frozen broccoli. It's a whole bag. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
yes, it's like the RFK Jr. Line of nutrition. Like, yes, we're going to take advice from a man who admitted recently that he snorted cocaine off of toilet seats. Like,
that was the craziest thing. Like, you could have chosen any example.
I know.
And that's what you...
I know.
America, what are we doing? Like...
But I agree with you, too, about the one piece of broccoli. Like, in what universe does that pass any sort of, like, food, like, information that we've ever been taught? Like, it's always, like, you're supposed to have a lot of vegetables. And not just one vegetable, but, like, my mom always said, a colorful plate.
5 servings a day, right? I'll eat 5 a day. How healthy I will be. Isn't he going back to that pyramid with his whole milk? And, I mean... One piece of broccoli is not 5 vegetables a day. At most, it's 3. And who eats broccoli for breakfast? Like,
literally. I know. I also want to touch on a connection that kind of just came up a little bit earlier, what we were talking about, which is the connection between the way that things in our economy move and climate justice as well. Like, I think that connection is super, super important. I'm reading Cathonomics kind of in preparation for this episode by Tony Annett. And in it, he talks a lot about that explicit connection. And also, this book came out in, I believe, 2022 or 2023. So Pope Francis was still alive. So it's very centered on Pope Francis. And as we know, Pope Francis was huge on, we got to care for the environment and we got to care for, like, people. Like, and really understanding what that means. And I also feel a strong sense of it was, like, setting aside kind of this idea. Honestly, this is the kind of Catholicism I experienced at, like, Franciscan and stuff, where it was so, like, performative in a way. Like, there was a lot of attention put into how do you look? How did you dress? Like, are you saying the right words? Are you praying is the music that you're listening to, like, the hip music to listen to right now? Like, and all the scrupulosity over, like, are you doing your cold showers for Lent or whatever the case may be, you know?
Yeah, I always used to say when I was there, and I would get some, side eye for this, but I felt that it was super, like, Pharisaical, not to get, like, super holy roller here, but it felt like people standing on the steps of the church, whipping themselves, being like, look at how holy I am. And I was like, literally. What? Because I wear skinny jeans and you can see the curve of my ass, I'm not holy? Like... I don't gotta wear a denim skirt and New Balance sneakers to be holy, right?
Literally.
Like,
and that was the thing too of, like, the contradiction, because the things we were being told were anybody can be holy. That was the talking points, and then yet there was this extreme attitude of, like, well, you're not doing it, not that way. You're not allowed to do it that way.
Yeah, and and this is probably a little off topic, but, like, I wonder how all of us that were formed there with that mentality, who did not ask the questions and do the work that you and I have been wrestling with since we left, like, how is that affecting the rest of the world, right? Like,
right.
And I mean, we're watching it in real time, I think. And it feels super dystopian and so ugly to watch it all unfold. But it's just, I personally was raised more like a Kennedy Catholic, like very New England, Brooklyn Irish Catholic. Like,
hell yeah.
You serve the poor, you love your neighbor, you love God, right? And there wasn't all these rules until I went to college. And so what I'm watching in real time in the world, coupled with the people that we know from our time at school, I'm like, this is not what Jesus would have wanted. Like,
I know. When I hear about somebody being like, oh yeah, we have tons of Franciscan grads who like come to our area, and then, oh yeah, and then by the way, there's been a measles outbreak now. I'm not saying that, I don't think it's been reported yet that happened exactly with Franciscan, but I do know that happened with Ave Maria University.
Yeah, which is where I used to live, right down by Ave Maria.
Yes.
Which is why we moved, because I was like, this place is crazy.
Oh my gosh, unhinged. And like,
yes.
Yeah, and the whole irony there too. This is like way off because this is now public health, but hey, we're going to just go there real quick. The fact that like those people also went to the March for Life. The irony of bringing a disease to a March for Life.
That would kill infants because they
Literally.
Can't be vaccinated against the measles until they're 6 months old. How pro-life are you? Tell me, please. Please tell me, how pro-life are you?
Exactly. So, so today we are asking, what happens when business logic starts governing society? So that's kind of like, when I say business logic, I'm talking about this like $3 meal thing. It's like, well, as a line item, like you only need XYZ sustenance. Like I'm going to assign you a $3 meal. That's a very business logic. It's not like, well, what would the person like to eat? What, like the business logic is like the opposite of this idea of human dignity, where we actually want to honor and respect people. And that, that gets into the whole conversation too, around the concept of like SNAP benefits and welfare. We have historically seen a lot of people who look at those things in a way of like, oh, well, they're just like leeching off the system. They're just, freeloaders. The whole concept of like welfare queens, which is so racist. But yeah, do you want to say something about that?
I
know. It's enraging.
Yes, it makes my blood absolutely boil, right? So, in the work that I do day to day, I focus a lot more on global poverty, right? And like that poverty level being just under $2 is what they're hoping everybody can earn in a day, right? So like what we're hoping to bring up global poverty wouldn't even afford that chicken Lunchable. And like to see people saying you're a welfare queen when we're trying to feed families. Yeah. Again, I'm like, that is just wrong. It's wrong on so many levels, because like, it doesn't matter what kind of car someone drives. You don't know if it's already paid off or not.
Right.
Why does it matter if someone has a cell phone? How do they work?
How do you live and exist in today's society without a cell phone?
Right. And so to say you have an iPhone, therefore you can't feed your child, to me does not make a lick of sense, because how are we calling doctors? How are they contributing to your economy by buying stuff on their phone if they don't have a phone? And like, everybody deserves to eat.
Yes. Period.
Right? Like, that's it. That's the sentence.
And that's
Everybody
also
deserves
a
to eat.
pro-life sentiment. Like,
you would think.
If we want people to be alive, then hey, guess what? We have to also make sure they're fed. Period.
And like, truthfully, I would have my money go to feeding everybody rather than kidnapping and murdering them. Like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I wanted to say period again, but I was like, I'm just gonna be a broken record over here. But yes, exactly. There is no coherent logic, and that's also really frustrating about people, like the people who attack things just mindlessly in this way. First of all, they have no like actual plan for making it work, but what really bothers me is there's nothing cohesive about their positions. Like they will hold positions simultaneously that contradict each other. That's so difficult for me. I'm like, why?
I'm with you. It's like, I cannot make this make sense. I just cannot.
I think there's definitely also a justice sensitivity feeling with like, this is against what you say you're for. That part also really bugs me.
Me too.
And I think what's interesting, though, is that the Catholic social teaching of it all that actually does affirm human dignity and actually does care about all these things that we're talking about. And actually, it's pretty interesting, too, because in one of Pope Francis's messages on World Day of the Poor. It was the 5th World Day of the Poor, which was November 14th, 2021. In that message, he actually used the word disordered to talk about basically wealthy and powerful people performing wealth extraction on the planet. And I thought that was super noteworthy because, for like LGBTQ Catholics, the whole thing is that Pope Benedict was responsible for putting the phrase intrinsically disordered into the catechism. And I'm like, okay, but where do we see the same outrage? Like, there's so much of a spotlight and attention on LGBTQ people. Pope Francis says that wealth extraction and basically the abuse of the poor is disordered. Like, where's the same level of like holding people accountable? And I mean, that's like obviously a huge theme for us right now. We're seeing other countries, we're seeing the UK and France prosecute people that they've found who are in the Epstein files, but interesting. There's been no arrests here in the US. Shannon's like, I'm going to just take a dramatic sip, like the meme, sipping the Kermit meme with the tea.
Exactly. But that's none of my business, except it's my business.
It's all of our business. I feel like that's the thing is like the solidarity of it and getting people to realize, because like, I know I'm also tangenting again here, but when Trump was inaugurated, and he immediately started on the first day of his second term, he immediately started signing all these executive orders that were like, trans people don't exist and we're going to do all these horrible things. When he started doing that, I was interviewed by the BBC. No big deal. Not trying to humble brag. I'm not actually trying to brag. I'm just bringing it up because I was talking to a European audience, an English audience, and I was very like, yeah, like, how many trans people are there? Why do you think that they've drummed up such a political drama and made it so extreme? It's because they're trying to distract from the things that we as voters and people and citizens have in common.
I wonder how this affects how you see your fellow Americans.
Knowing that there are like truly more important things that we all should be caring about that do actively unite us. And my hope is that at some point, as Americans, we can all start to realize and recognize and see, hey, wait a minute, like, actually, we have collective interests here that it would benefit all of us from joining together and speaking up about.
That was Max Kuzma, a trans man in Ohio who transitioned in 2019 at the age of 28.
If we are all so busy attacking each other because, you're trans or you support trans or when in reality, like, the numbers are so slim, especially like with the trans athlete thing, like the numbers of trans athletes is so minuscule that the level of melodrama and outrage and intensity is just so overblown. But the point is, like, we as citizens have material concerns that are more connected. Like, we need to be more together because we have more interests that are worth protecting. Because if we're fighting, the people on the top are just going to like scoop up all the excess while we're just busy down here.
Yep, 100%. The thing that really riles me up about it all is that, like, us, all of us, that's not like that top 1%.
Yeah.
We are one accident, one thing away from being unhoused and living in poverty.
Yes.
Right? So like we are all so much more alike than we realize. And exactly what you're saying was like, we need to band together and see what is similar, because you're right. The people in wealth are corrupt and they are just taking, and they're distracting us so that they can take more. And if things go awry, then like they're going to be fine. Right.
Exactly.
And we're not. So
that reminds me of something I learned too, which I'm gonna try to get it right because I think it's important. But also I wanted to say at some point, like some sort of disclaimer that, I'm not a financial expert in any way. So please take any thoughts with a grain of salt, do your own research, all that type of good stuff. But what you were saying reminded me that, right now, with the way that the stock market is and with the way that the market is in general with this, basically it's kind of like a false economy in a way, because a lot of businesses are sort of just like coasting through this weird, murky environment where someone at the top, Trump, is making decisions that are like creating this weird fake thing where, they have to like present him with gifts or bribes, and then he just like doesn't give the consequences to them, but he's grabbing all these other assets from over here. So it's like a very weird, unreal, speculative kind of market right now. And what I heard being discussed was this idea of like the people who have assets right now are largely fine, because when you have assets in a very unstable market, those assets, like physical assets, like people who have a house or property or whatever the case may be, or I guess like maybe like bonds or things, investments that are like very stable, those things are going up in value because it's a very unstable time. So those people are actually making money while everyone else is being super, super stretched thin. And that's really frustrating too, because it's like just underscores that if we allow, I think this is the point I wanted to get to, like we can talk about like the morality of it, like, is it right or wrong that businesses are doing this? But I think even more fundamentally, like even more basically, the question is like, do we want to let them do this? Like they are going to do it if we let them. And that's this whole thing of like unchecked capitalism. Because like everyone's always like, well, you have to let capitalism just do its thing. And I'm like, if you just let capitalism do its thing, it's going to find a new market, like absorb all the innovation that it can, then eject the people who made that innovation possible because they're expensive. And then somebody who's more wealthy and powerful is going to come along and strip that entire business for parts, because we have seen that over and over again. It's the story of like all these, like tons of American manufacturing, like General Electric. Like look into the history of General Electric. It's basically that story.
Well, and then going back to our title of Avocado Toast, it's really millennials who are suffering through this right now, because like I have to believe, so that I don't like fall into a hole being a parent, but like that this bubble will burst, right? Like at some point it's going to become unsustainable. And so like generations after us will likely have better opportunities. At least I can hope.
I hope so too. Yeah.
But we really don't have that. We don't have that, ability. I'm very fortunate that I was able to buy a home, but like, that's because I have privilege, and I acknowledge that, and try to be a good steward of what I do have. But for the vast majority of our age bracket, this is not a thing, right? Like, and it's only getting harder and harder to be able to buy a home, to be able to buy a car, to be able to do anything. And it really has nothing to do with the avocado toast, which, by the way, costs about $3. Like, Could I have avocado toast as my meal? Like,
exactly. Basically, like, don't treat yourself. I think that's part of it. And part of it is a misunderstanding of like how much things cost, but part of it is also like, don't treat yourself. Like, I feel like we as well with the millennials, like, I don't know. I think the grind culture it became its biggest, and the gig culture, this like everyone's having to piece together an income from like working for Uber, doing freelance stuff online, like all that whole thing. And I think younger people very much figured out that the hustle and the grind thing is not it. Like, even just reports of Gen Z, like, being fine telling their employer they're sick. Like, we as millennials, I feel like, struggle so much with that. We're like, we cannot miss a day of work. Like, are you kidding? Yeah, just, I guess, just thoughts there about how like the generations deal differently with the situation we've been handed.
yeah. Well, and I think part of that too, right, is we were told, get a degree, work hard, work your way up from the top or the bottom, and you'll make your way to the top. Like,
Exactly.
You will be rewarded. And it's just not really the case, right? So like, people younger than us, I feel, are okay with also switching jobs like frequently.
Yeah.
Whereas I would never. Like,
I know, right?
You're underpaying me. I like one of my first jobs out of college, I was like really underpaid, and I stayed far longer than I should have because I was like, I would never. Like, I'm here. I owe them this, right?
But what people think too, if they look at my resume and I've jumped around all the time, how am I going to be judged for that?
Yes. And, it's also really interesting. I don't know if you've noticed too, like in the super conservative Christian circles, this whole like being a stay-at-home mom and like turning it into an influencer gig to try to make money. And I think that's part of like our generation is right now in that, and they're thinking they can like use that as a side hustle. And like, I don't know if when you were at Franciscan, something that like was consistently put upon me was like, having any money, this goes to that treat yourself mentality, is bad. You are not holy if you indulge in things that cost money. So you were watching these trad wifey Catholic people and Christians do this, but like, they're like, that's a whole ass job. Sorry, that's a whole job. Being an influencer is a whole job. Like, they're not just stay-at-home moms. They're working, and they're telling you need to cook your own bread to save money. Like, it's not that expensive to make sourdough, but also like, you're making money off the sourdough. And so you're preaching this, you can't have nice things ever because then you're not holy. But then also, it goes back to disconnect. Like,
Yes, 100%. That's another one of those examples that I also find so frustrating of like it not being a coherent system. And I think a little bit of I want to name a few things here. One is the trad wife ecosystem. I think a little bit of what you're talking about is that maybe the extreme of what you're talking about is that, where it's because the thing about trad wife is like, I think it's half meme where it's like an incel fantasy where there's this woman who does all this domestic labor for me, I really feel like it's half that. And then half kind of what you're talking about where it's like basically I feel like there's some purity culture in it too, but I'm thinking of the Puritans because the Puritans were so like, you cannot be idle in any way. You have to work, and work is what gives like glory to God. I feel like there's something in there about this whole thing of like make everything from scratch, and you're busy every waking moment of the day because you're doing everything the frickin' hard way.
Yeah, for real. Like, no.
Yes, and equating holiness to doing things the hard way. Yeah, I think that connection too.
Yes.
And then two other things I wanted to say from what we were just talking about. First, I think what it is with the younger generations being more willing to, I guess, push back against, to be more alert to the ways an employment situation might not be the best for them, like if they're being worked too hard or underpaid or things like that. I think it's because they are more aware that there's like no real prize. We had this like carrot dangled, and now it's been pretty much proven that the carrot was already eaten by the 1%. So like there's really not going to be that much upside, even if we do kill ourselves in this hustle mentality. And then one last thing. I'm sorry, I had so many thoughts. I wrote them down to connect them all. With the hustle moms as well, this like entrepreneurial thing where you're supposed to like be an influencer as a stay-at-home mom. I've watched some really interesting reporting on this that basically kind of shows that a lot of the women who engage in this, there will be someone who like sells a course and it's like, here's how you can do this. And then what ends up happening is it kind of becomes a pyramid scheme, because it's like the people in the group who are all trying to do it that exact way, which is not actually backed by the expertise. And that's the thing, is like just the assumption that just being online and just putting clips of you making lunch and being like, shout out other tired mamas, but there's like no actual like coherent structure, or like you're not even trying to say anything, you're just like presenting something. And then it's also sad because it just becomes the people in those groups like, okay, leave 5 comments on other people in the community's videos today, and it's like, yeah.
It's super crazy. Predatory. It's yes. Predatory. I mean, we won't go down the MLM rabbit hole, but like that is also super predatory to stay-at-home moms. And I just think it doesn't value the inherent dignity of humans. Like, anyways, okay.
So returning to one of those things I was saying about like basically that we as citizens have more in common, like it's in our interest to actually band together and ask for things collectively, like, hey, healthcare affects everyone, wages affect everyone. Even if you are different from someone and hold different beliefs from them, you can still be like, okay, but together we still care about these things that affect all of us. I want to talk a little bit more and just pull that thread out by talking about how Americans are more focused on symbolic culture war issues than on these material conditions that actually shape our lives: wages, healthcare, housing, labor rights. We are debating what people are allowed to say online, like literally, like if you're allowed to criticize the government. And then we're simultaneously saying, you know, people can't use pronouns in schools, and trans people aren't even allowed to go to the bathroom. Like, what are you talking about? Like, do we remember when we didn't allow Black people to like use the facilities? Like, how is this different in the sense of like why are we okay with this when we know that this is a very clear example of discrimination? And again, the systems that shape our economy and our economic security basically are just like not being checked by anybody. They're just going wild out there. I experienced this all as a trans person when my identity is turned into one of these cultural points. And so everyone is staring at us and talking about us, a small group of people. Meanwhile, the money being used to provide healthcare to the poorest Americans was liquidated in order to pay for all this new ICE stuff. And I think this ICE stuff is also kind of what got me wanting to talk about this subject, like bringing in the economy specifically, because it's so obvious that it's basically just a big money-making thing for big business, because the ICE detention centers are the perfect example. Oh, I thought the whole thing was deportation. So why are we indefinitely detaining people? Maybe because of the freaking dollar signs associated with that little whatever tiny amount of square footage they're designating to these people being held in these inhumane conditions. These people aren't even getting this $3 chicken meal. They're getting something much worse. And the conditions are so bad because it's literally just about making money.
Yeah. It's horrifying. That's horrifying. Like, again, Kennedy, New England Catholic, like, treat others the way you want to be treated. Like, that just seems like such a basic statement. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's how I'm raising my kids, obviously. Like, would you want to be shoved in with 35 other people with tinfoil blankets and being fed slop into one tiny space? Like, we have the money. We do. I mean, it's there and it's not being used properly. Right? Like, it's just not. I don't know. I just can't understand the, like, desire to be so inhumane.
Yeah. I can only understand it from the perspective of people who believe that they are just so insulated and separate from us. Like this idea that the extreme wealth has put them into a category where they just never have to like think about or experience or care about what we go through. It's literally just like line items. It's like the whole thing of why uh education and traveling the world is always talked about as an important part of like human development and character development and growth, is because when you actually get out there and meet other people and see and experience things, like if you have only like if you are from generational wealth that is so extreme that you've like never had to like do anything for yourself or like actually been stretched, it's kind of like the I've seen challenges where it's like the CEO tries to live as or to live on the same budget of their poorest employee, and like they give up after like 3 days. Like when they're so insulated, I think is where some of that comes from, which is why I've been really really moved by this research I've done into what Pope Francis has said. Um I think I mentioned before this message from the fifth day, World Day of the Poor, which he says a lot of these things in other places and in other ways. Like this is just happens to be one of them that I was, looking at. My point is just, you can find it in other places. He says, if the poor are marginalized as if they were to blame for their condition, then the very concept of democracy is jeopardized. Again, he wrote this in 2021. And every social policy will prove bankrupt. With great humility, we should confess that we are often incompetent when it comes to the poor. We talk about them in the abstract. We stop at statistics. Again, this thing where it's like just about the money, the bottom line. Like, and that's even where the whole, the SNAP criticisms come from, because it's like, well, they shouldn't be spending this on, a cake. They shouldn't be allowed to buy a cake with their SNAP benefits. And they're like, you don't think poor people should be allowed to like celebrate with a cake once in a while? Like,
Like,
bro.
they don't have birthdays.
Exactly. Exactly.
They
And
don't get a raise every once in a while, a 25-cent raise that maybe they want a cake.
Exactly. Pope Francis goes on, and we think we can move people's hearts by filming a documentary, which on some level feels like he's criticizing those like YouTubers who will be like surprising a poor person with $5,000 or whatever. And it's like, that is the antithesis of Pope Francis, who is like, you're supposed to actually be, it's not a one-way thing. It's not, I have money and I'm giving it to you. Pope Francis is all about the relational thing. So he goes on, poverty, on the contrary, should motivate us to creative planning aimed at increasing the freedom needed to live a life of fulfillment according to the abilities of each person. It is an illusion that we should reject to think that freedom comes about and grows through the possession of money. Serving the poor effectively moves us into action and makes it possible to find the most suitable ways of raising and promoting this part of humanity that all too often is anonymous and voiceless, but which has imprinted on it the face of the Savior who asks for our help. Like, so good.
I have full body chills right now. Like,
Yes.
oh.
And I just feel it's so important too, because I think the biggest thing is, okay, so multiple different stuff going on. Like we've got this prosperity gospel stuff going on in America, which is definitely like evangelical flavored. Like I think about all the different people. There's I don't know her name off the top of my head, but there's a pastor associated with the White House right now who I have seen like do the infomercials where it's like, call now to send a $5,000 gift, to basically now is a very good time to pray for XYZ with your money to us. Like give us money, basically divine lottery machine, like on the chance that, your donation to God is gonna like cash out for you. Like it's basically that.
Yuck.
I know. It's horrible. And yeah. That is one of the big things.
Yeah. Well, and it's listening to what you're saying and then the Pope Francis quote. This is something that I firmly and deeply believe, and this is why I do the work that I do, is that every political issue, full stop, points back to poverty.
Yes, exactly.
Every political issue, right? So we can talk about the climate. Who gets most affected? The poor.
Yes.
Right? Like Flint, Michigan with the lead pipes, right? Like it's people in underserved communities. The pro-choice, pro-life dilemma, what does that come down to, right? It comes down to someone who most likely can't afford to take care of another life. And maybe if we stood in solidarity with people and said, hey, you should have clean drinking water. Hey, it shouldn't be impossible to raise a child. Diapers are expensive. Breastfeeding isn't easy, right? Like these are talking points we hear like, oh, cloth diaper. Listen, I've cloth diapered. It is not easy. It is a chore. You do it because you save money, but do you save money with all that water, right? Like I have extended breastfed all of my children. That's hours and hours of my life that I'm happy to give them. But it didn't come easy with any of my kids because I didn't have a really great milk supply. So like that was a lot of work, right? And I can't imagine being someone like my first job out of college was a Starbucks barista. I can't imagine being a barista, getting up, doing that graveyard shift, and then having to do all the other things that it takes to keep these small people alive, let alone try to raise them to be justice seekers and peace weavers, right? Like, so all of these things point back to people living in poverty. Everything. And as you're saying, though, like we don't have that sense of solidarity with each other because it's so easy to be like, well, that's not my problem. Yeah. Like, I can't afford my avocado toast, so that's not my problem. But it is. It's all of our problem. And the world would be a much better place if we could all just stand together and say, hey, we're all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He also, Pope Francis, in this same document, has another line that I think is important and ties in here as well, which talks about basically what it means to live in that solidarity. So he says, unless we choose to become poor in passing riches, worldly power, and vanity, we will never be able to give our lives in love. We will live a fragmented existence full of good intentions, but ineffective for transforming the world, which I feel like that really captures in a lot of ways like this idea of like social media activism or awareness, where it's like eyes on XYZ, which yes, we need to be documenting and paying attention to what is going on. Like that's vital work. But if it's just looking at someone who is poor as the other, I really like how he said fragmented, because it's really this idea that people who have money and people who don't have money are intrinsically different. That is like a lie, because to your point, we are all the same. We are all just trying to live. We all have innate human dignity. It doesn't matter where we come from or the circumstances of our life, because the truth is we didn't control that. And that's what's so messed up to me about this idea of the prosperity gospel and stuff too. Anything that implies that you have extra status because of something that was random, accidental. Like again, we don't control those things. We don't control our privilege, like the privileges that we have or do not have. So I think that's what Pope Francis is really getting at, which I think is so important. And I think that he also, I just really want to say, modeled it so beautifully in his papacy of like, yes, we are all the same, and I will meet you human to human, like the way that he met with the transgender community. I got to meet with him and tell him I'm a transgender person. He didn't freak out. He didn't be like, get out of here. He was like, I'm meeting you as a person right now. You and me together, we are able to connect in this very basic human dignity way.
100%. And it's like, this is a silly thing that I tell people when they have to go meet someone that's like way higher up in a company, or like for myself, when I like talk to members of Congress, like, and I'm nervous, we all put our pants on the same way, right?
Yes.
Like when it comes down to it, we're all built the same. And like, it doesn't matter how much power, how much money, how much influence you have. When you get out of bed in the morning, like, you have to put one leg and then the other, right? And that, I mean, that's something that helps me when I'm going to talk to someone who's influential and powerful. But it really is that simple. It really is that simple. And how have we lost our way so dramatically as a society that something that should be so simple is impossible to even see, you know? And I think the big part of it is, as you've been bringing us back here in this wandering conversation, that like these culture wars, we're constantly being hit with things to like distract us from the important simplicity of we're all the same.
Yes. Yes. And I think this is actually a good point to kind of talk about, why our differences, like the things that are those little things that are getting blown way out of proportion, how honoring those things is honoring human dignity. And not only that, but beneficial, not just to society, but to the economy. And and that's the part where, like, again, you've got these trolls online and stuff who I think are committed to misunderstanding this. It's kind of the whole thing too of like the lack of coherency in these arguments. Another piece of that is going to bat against things just because of the person who brought it up sometimes, you know, or like the double standard of like, you know, it was the whole thing where you would go get gas somewhere and you would see the pictures people put of Biden saying, I did this, pointing at the price. But we don't have people doing that about, like, I don't know, these tariffs that just like sucked all this money out of like working class people. Anyway, I'm ranting there a little bit, but.
No, I was just going to say, I really love that commitment to misunderstanding. Like that's a powerful phrase that I'm going to be sitting with for like the next year.
It's like it's one of those on par with like as per my last email. You can drop that one when you want to be like, I feel a commitment to misunderstanding here. That was one of my favorite social media posts back in the day. I'm sure they like still do them, where it was like, tell me professional ways to like tell someone off. That was like the best threads.
I love those ones.
Yes. But yeah, like I think so I'm definitely talking about LGBTQ people mostly here because like that's my area of expertise, but kind of the header of this section of what I just brought up is basically DEI and the whole freaking out about DEI and being like, oh, this is taking away opportunities from straight white men and giving them to people who are unqualified. Again, with the commitment to misunderstanding, because as we know, it's not that at all. Like DEI initiatives were so often basically like a one chance slot. So the people that were taking advantage of that slot still had to go through almost like double or triple the amount of like proving themselves and qualifications, facing systemic biases and pushback, had to still get through all of that stuff. But then we're actually guaranteed an opportunity to try for a slot, which is completely different than saying, oh, the DEI people just soaked up all the resources and soaked up all the stuff. Now, I will say I do think, as with anything, that there are performative DEI policies, that is true. Like that there have been, I'm not saying that there can be no abuses of a DEI forward system. I'm just saying it was already a very difficult gauntlet to get to a job. It was just more of an opportunity to have a shot.
100% agree with you. My only commentary is look what those straight white guys are doing. How's our economy doing? Are we really like?
Yeah. There's like two other side things here. So one is the removal of the DEI stuff actually did also hurt straight white guys, because the point of it is that it's equitable for it's an opportunity that anyone can take advantage of. So just the irony there and the lack of coherence. And then secondly is we actually do have statistics about DEI as a positive thing for the economy. So some of the reasons that having prioritizing and honoring diversity in your workforce, some of the reasons why that this is a benefit are the creative potentiality is way higher, because different people who have gone through different things, or even just like people from other countries who have different perspectives, they will bring solutions that you may not think of. And I think this is just like, we have to break out of this idea that there is one blueprint for how you're supposed to live your life. Because the other thing about it is like, none of us are the perfect template. Nobody is like that was the thing about like Franciscan as well that I finally noticed was like, okay, the social status goes to the person who is like the perfect straight white engaged and then gets married person, but like it's just completely random chance if that person even exists. And it's so rare because like, so you have to be born with all the right attributes, and then you also have to like have the wealth and the status that like would permit that. And there can't be anything like, you can't have any like, you can't have a disability, you can't have any health problems. Like there are so many things that diversity and DEI encompasses. It's not just, okay, now that we have promoted DEI, everyone has to have blue hair and multiple pronouns. Like, that's not even what it is. It's just we are making a bigger tent, a bigger space to allow more people, more opportunities, which in turn helps us because we're learning from them. That's really just the point I wanted to make there.
Right. Well, and, like the more people that are welcome to the table, the more money get spent at the places. And so like, I know for me personally, when Target rolled back its DEI, like I'm one person, so I'm, just a drop in the bucket, but like I try not to shop at Target anymore. Right. And I try to shop local. I try to shop at stores that support people. Like we have a local pizza shop here that gave away dinner, no questions asked, when the SNAP benefits are rolled back in my town. And like, that's the only pizza place we order from, right? It's Lent, so pizza's on my mind. But like, the more you take away and the more you exclude people, the less money that's going to be coming in, because like, that's just how it works. Right.
It's like all the countries now who are like, don't travel to the US. And it's like, did you guys forget about the fact that we made so much money from tourism that is just going poof right now? Like,
right.
And all the industries, like towns that literally only exist because of a stream of tourists. What's happening to them? You know what I mean?
What is happening to them? Like, we have lost the plot as a country. That's what's happening to them. We have lost the plot.
Everything that Pope Francis is saying is, you can see it in the life of Jesus. Like the Cathonomics book I mentioned, I really recommend it because he really emphasizes this as well. Just that everything about Jesus and everything that Jesus did, like the life that Jesus lived as a human was a very poor life. He wasn't born into like a noble class or something like that. He was a laborer, and in fact, sort of a type of labor that, you know, was kind of inconsistent, not always going to be super reliable. And then, of course, that we talk about all the time is that spent all of his time seeking out the people who were the most marginalized in whatever way that was. So I just think that's like, I don't know, you know, that's kind of the whole thesis of it all, is that human dignity is important, and we don't have to live in an economy where there's no guardrails. Like we are the economy. We are the ones who spend money. So I think it's entirely reasonable for us to say, hey, these are our expectations for the companies and the systems that serve us, because if they don't do that, we are not going to participate in this, because we can use our buying power and our privilege and our voices to make noise about that. We can do something tangible and concrete. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, Shannon.
No, I'm just here like, I'm your hype girl. Let's go.
Yes. Hell yes. I love it so much. So as we wind down to the end of the conversation, I want to ask you, is there anything else that you think we should cover, or a question you think I should ask you that you think would be good to include?
I think that like your voice matters. And so, yes, as you were just saying, where you spend your money, how you do this, but also like look up who your representatives are and be loud. It's working. We're seeing it work. And so don't lose hope yet. You know, it's easy in this crazy time we're living in to just be like, nothing's ever gonna work for my good. But it's working. And so like, use your voice, right? And don't give up and just keep going. And there's websites, there's apps, there's ways to do it that are easier than the ways that I do it. But, you know, use your voice, call your reps, make yourself heard. And then as for Franciscan, this is something that's really interesting is, I kind of always viewed it because, you know, it's on the hill and blah, blah, blah. Like it's away from the community that is very underserved. And I wrestled with that a lot while I was there. But like the ultimate thing that like I decided when I was there, taking away anything that was like positive. Now I was a business major, so I was not really involved with anything theology based. You know, I did some of the praise and worship teams and whatever, but like I was not as indoctrinated while there. But like, you know, the Easter Vigil candle, and they light the big candle and then they light all the little candles. I like vowed to myself that whatever positive thing I could take from Franciscan, I would go out and use it. Now, there's not a lot of positives I can take from my time at Franciscan, except for the fact that, like, as you were just saying, Jesus was marginalized, right? He was amongst the marginalized. And so, like, I take that knowledge and I take what Jesus would have done, and now that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to spread that light.
The action of respecting human dignity, and like when you take yourself out of obsessing over all of these metrics and all of these things, like you are living more in reality by loving and by caring for your neighbor, and even not micromanaging yourself or stressing about like, oh, am I doing everything perfectly? Like, is this how I'm supposed to interact with this person? But when you are centering the authentic connection and showing up as authentically you has so much power. And because then when you as authentically you meet another person, they receive the gift of your authenticity and they can return it. And that is a huge way of honoring another person and honoring their human dignity, respecting them. I really think a lot of it is us needing to eject ourselves from the capitalistic mindset of like, this is what we have to do to survive. Well, actually, no, we don't actually have to do it that way. We do have to survive. We do live in a society, yes, but we can center something that is more life-giving on a fundamental level rather than this dog-eat-dog world. And that's a wrap, which feels like a food-related pun, on our avocado toast-fueled tour of the economy, doesn't it? Like, I feel like it feels like because that's what they want you to make with that $3 meal, with your one piece of broccoli, your big piece of chicken. Well, it's a small piece of chicken.
Small piece of chicken.
It's like one bite, like, wrap with that little corn tortilla and one little broccoli.
Like a really tiny McDonald's snack wrap.
Exactly. Shannon, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and for bringing your experience and your perspective, your expertise, and your trademark Hellraiser energy to this conversation. It is rare to find someone who can talk about all these different things, the broccoli, speculative bubbles, and Catholic social teaching in the same breath, and also still make it feel like a cohesive moral adventure. We have laughed a little, maybe cringed a lot, I think, thinking about some of these aspects. Our millennial cringe going hard here. And hopefully we've thought a lot about what it really means for the economy to serve people and not the other way around. For me, one of the clearest takeaways is that even as we wrestle with systems that are disordered, exploitative, or downright absurd, just why does that even exist? There's something solid to hold on to, which is the radical structural insistence from Catholic social teaching that human dignity is non-negotiable. Solidarity isn't sentimental, and no one is disposable. So if there's one thing I hope that listeners take away from this episode, it's that caring about inclusion, protecting the marginalized, and building systems that value people over profit isn't just nice or like being a good person. It's also practical, moral, and yes, even kind of revolutionary. And if you can get there while enjoying your avocado toast, well, that's just a bonus. So Shannon, thank you again for being here, for making this messy, complicated, and sometimes ridiculous world of economics make a little bit more sense for our listeners. And for everyone else, remember, the economy isn't neutral, but our choices in politics, in solidarity, and even in what we choose for breakfast can start to tip the balance in favor of dignity, justice, and a little more sense in the world.